Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's BDF44. Uh, what's on my mind right now is my Native American roots. I don't have the privilege of knowing any Native American people in my personal life right now. I know some people online that I follow very closely and interact with them here and there, but not in the physical. I don't know anyone who happens to be Native American at this time. I know people who have Native American in their blood because I am one of those people. Um, so I tend, in my own little bubble of life, in my own little corner of the world, in my mind, I, and I say this respectfully, pride myself as Native American. Not solely, of course. I'm a black man, of course. But there's enough in my heritage on both my mother and my father's side to where, and so little in my life to where when I see Native American issues, I don't have many people to reference to see how they actually feel. So I just go by how I feel. You see what I'm saying? For example, with the Redskins thing, I couldn't reference anybody's opinion to know how they felt. But I can tell you I didn't like it from my ancestors. You know, when I think about my Native American roots, the first person that comes to mind is my great grandmother on my mother's side. My mother's mom. She was, I believe, half Native American. I believe half. If she wasn't half, one of her parents were half. Something like that. But her Native American roots are extremely strong. She had the straight hair, bone structure, skin slightly, different than normal African American skin. Slightly, so it's very difficult for me to explain that. But she had Native American features, and I tell you, man, I don't know nothing about nothing. So I just kind of sit here and I say this from an ignorant perspective. But there was something extremely spiritual about her passing. When my great grandmother passed away, the night of, she lived in Richmond, California. That's up north by Oakland, San Francisco area, up there. I live in Los Angeles. I was laying in my bed. I don't remember if I had already received the call telling my mom and myself the news. I don't remember. And I know that that's relevant for the story, but I just honestly don't remember if I already knew or not. But I laid my head down and I heard the loudest ringing in my ear that I had ever heard in my life. It sounded like someone had one of those bells that you ring, sort of like if you watch Breaking Bad, the little ringy-ding bell that the individual in the wheelchair had, the old guy in the wheelchair used to try to get attention for whoever's taking care of him, try to communicate that way. That ringing, the ring ding 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 ding, I heard that in my ear, but it was super rapid fast. It was extremely loud in my inner ear, in a pitch black, quiet room. My mother was in the living room sleep, no TV on, nothing. Loud inner ringing in my ear, so loud that it hurt. It was painful. I believe we got the call after that she had passed. Fast forward to the funeral, somewhere in there. We go back down within a week and a half, 2 weeks, of course, to lay her to rest. And we're sitting around in her house afterward. I believe after the funeral, everybody's chilling. And then my uncle, her son, my great grandmother's son, my great uncle, I believe it was him. We're all sitting in the living room, about 8 or 9 family members. So we're sitting there just talking. All of a sudden, he was like, all right, family. So who heard the bell? And like 7 people raised their hand, including myself. And we all were looking around like, did you communicate? Did you tell anybody you heard? Nah, most of these people hadn't talked to each other. Most of us did not know that each other had heard this. I don't believe my mother heard it. I heard it. My auntie, I believe, heard it. One of my aunts heard it, and like several other family members who had flown in and things. They had all heard the same ringing bell that I heard in my inner ear. My uncle brought it up. I never mentioned it before that to anybody, and we all knew what he was talking about. And then I don't remember who this was. Maybe my grandmother said, "Oh, you heard the bell, huh? Well, you know she keeps a bell next to her bed, and she would ring it to try to get her son to come in and help her." Like that was what she had for herself. We didn't know this either. Went into the bedroom, the bell was right there. I picked it up, I ringed it. It was the exact same sound that I heard in my inner ear when my grandmother, when that night we got the news. Same bell that everybody else, however 6 people, whoever raised their hand, the same exact sound that they heard in their inner ears across the country. It's the same bell that she had next to her bed, ringing, ringing, ringing. I say that because to me, that's a sign, a direct sign that lends itself to the spirituality of Native Americans. I do believe that. I believe that deep in my soul that had something to do with the way they move. That wasn't, I don't think that was anything other than the spirit of the Native American prayers, their whole rituals, everything that they did. They communicate with as ancestors. They communicate with their loved ones, and the youth communicate with the ancestors. That was a thing, to my knowledge. And again, I come from a place where I don't have a lot of information, unfortunately. But it's something in my bones that just makes me feel like through the Native American blood that I have in my system, that it connects me deeper somehow to the earth, nature, that kind of thing. I feel at peace in the presence of nature, that kind of thing. It's not something I can actually explain without sounding completely off my head, but it's how I've always felt, and that's something I wanted to share with you guys, to just say, like, it may seem as if there are not a lot of Native American people around because they've been all, pushed to reservations and have of course bred out, respectfully speaking, into blacks and whites and everything else that this country provides Mexicans. And a lot of Native American people live as Mexican people amongst Mexican people. We understand this, and that's just what's going on. So it's hard to really know who's who at times. A lot of them, they're just not out identifiable. Like one of my Caucasian friends on Facebook, she mentioned something in regards to Native American, something that was offensive to Native American. She said she was not offended, and she represents Native American blood because she has it in her system, or however you best say that. And that just speaks to what it is today. We don't see them out in the open like we should. They're not as represented in these communities and in these places in this country like they should be. And it's really, really sad, because this is their land, this is their home, this is the place where they prayed to their ancestors and had all their experiences and took care of the land and did right and respected right and wrong. And two, in their race they had good and evil, but at the end of the day, their reputation was that of peace. Their reputation was that of people who prided themselves on being one with the earth and one with one another, and true to their tribes and true to their culture. And I just feel like it's been lost that this is theirs. It's like they're a talking point, you know what I mean, for America, a necessary evil in the eyes of white supremacy, to where you destroyed them and took their beautiful land and made it something greater than they ever could. And that's the nature of the reality that this country is built upon. And I resent it for my ancestors. I resent it for for my fellow Native American people who are lost in other breeds of life, other races, will not know of their heritage, will not identify as Native American. And that's why I choose to. That's why I personalize Native American issues. I personalize it. I don't look at it as them, even though I speak that way in this video. I look at it as us. And I embody that belief and that love for not only the heritage that I've shared, but for the millions and millions of people who were lost in a crime that went unpunished. And that's that's part of why I'm so vocal. It's not just the black side of me that's very, very passionate about getting my voice out and trying to come together with others to collectively bring down the system that punished our people. I look at that as something that is right. It's righteous for the retribution of the Native American, for Native Americans to receive the justice that they deserve. I think that's right. I think that's something that should happen at some point. And I hope that I can put myself in a position to learn more about their people, that I can meet more people of Native American roots, and that they'll accept me, for as someone who has some of their blood in his system, quite a bit of it, because I got a lot of love, I got a lot of pride, and I represent. And when I walk out the house, when I walk down the street, I'm a black and I'm a Native American person, like I am. And so that's how I look at it, man. That's how I look at it. I take a great deal of pride in my roots, and I think of my grandfather on my dad's side, Israel. I believe that his mom may have been Native American. I think that's how that went. I know that my grandfather, my dad's dad, was biracial, triracial. He was white, black, and Native American. How that came about, who was what in regards to his mom and dad, I don't know. But the point is, I got Native American roots everywhere. Like, it's probably a fourth of me is Native American, or even a third. So this is one of those situations where I take it very seriously when I hear about injustices done to them today, or hear about them struggling, or hear about them finding themselves corrupted by just modern American culture. Alcoholism is something that has been spoken about a lot in regards to how the plight that they have found themselves suffering from. And those are stereotypes and things of that nature that I know very little about. But what I can say is, whatever they're dealing with is something that we should be looking to help them with. I think it's been a long time coming that we started honoring them for who they are. They are the original people of this land, to my knowledge. And whoever came before them is too far back to really talk about it. But the original people of this land deserve some respect. They deserve monuments. They deserve to not have their, and this is another thing that is very important to me, to not have their culture vilified like it's been vilified by white supremacy. Cowboys and the Indians were always the bad guys. Why were the Indians the bad guys? What part of the story that we know of this country makes the Native Americans the bad guys? And yet that's the narrative they've been pushing on generations before us. That's the narrative they pushed on us. Like we're supposed to celebrate their genocide. It's the most disrespectful thing, in my opinion, outside of some of the more notable disrespectful things that we discuss all the time. But to not only do what they've done to those people, but to also twist the narrative about their character, calling them savages because they lived a certain way, calling them bad guys because they didn't want to comply with certain stuff that y'all wanted to implement once you took over. I mean, it just speaks to how evil whites have been to so many. Like, I can't shake that. It's hard to shake it. When you want to when you want to separate people and you want to say, not separate people, but separate bad from good in regards to race, you don't want to say all they. But the reality is, yeah, it's they. In this case, it's they. And it hurts to say, like, I would love to not have to get up here and talk about how this happened because they did this, or that happened because they did that. The reality is, it's what happened, man. It's just what happened. It doesn't vilify a whole race of people, but it does put a bad reputation on that race of people, and that it's theirs to own, I guess. I mean, I can't speak to that. But what I can say is the Native American people deserve to be honored officially by this country. And if they're giving us, black people, reparations, I feel like Native Americans deserve their own. There should be something for them. And it shouldn't just be little corner pockets of the world where they can just huddle together and stay out of the way of white supremacy. I think that that's wrong. They should be right here next to us, enjoying the fruits of whatever it is that we eat. And still priding themselves on tribes. When I think about gang ties, gang affiliations, and things that we find ourselves celebrating in our culture as African Americans, as black, as brown Americans, I look at the Native Americans. I say they were the first Bloods, Crips, VG, Vice Lords, and GDs. They were the first real tribes, gangs, and they were running around doing what it is that they do to represent their tribes. The behavior that you see in these streets is the behavior of their ancestors. Like, this is what we need to work into our equation as we assess the people around us and how they move. And white America, if they weren't spending so much time vilifying people, they would understand them better. Gangs, in our culture as blacks, we have always been tribal, African people. And if you couple that with the native blood, they have always been tribal. So it stands to reason why modern individuals would find themselves being tribal. You know what I mean? So just take that into account when you're assessing who's a gang member and who's doing what. They're just doing what their ancestors have always done. With that being said, I do honor the tribes that I'm aware of, especially the ones that I'm related to. The ones that I know that I'm related to are the Blackfoot, Choctaw, Cherokee. Those are the ones that I'm aware of. I have not heard of my family being related to anyone else. Maybe once heard Sioux, possibly, but that wasn't reiterated to me like my mother reiterated the three others: Blackfoot, Choctaw, and Cherokee. Especially Blackfoot. We have a lot of Blackfoot in our family, from what I've been told. So, yeah, man. Yeah, this is what it's about. Just shedding some light on things that matter to me, and hopefully bringing forth some type of awareness for studying and interacting and ultimately trying to know more about people who have been just kind of swept aside, who've fallen kind of back, who've kind of integrated into other races and other cultures, and just have ultimately been annihilated from their very own land. And that is a true crime. So yeah, my name is BDF44. Thank you guys for watching, and I'm out.